All right. So we've got the recording in the backup. We go.
We've got the redundancy.
Yeah.
We've learnt from our mistakes.
You were just asking
weeks.
about this beautiful new
was.
tablet on the desk there. So there's got a backup recording running on the Daylight computer, which is like an e-ink screen tablet, but it's like a special e-ink screen that actually runs smoothly. It will do 60 frames per second. They remove all the blue light, and it's a kind of, I bought it as a not taking a phone to bed computer, and just like wanting to be have something that was just less impactful.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I want to get the minimal phone when it comes out. Is it minimal? I think it's minimal.
I think that's the one you've told me about.
Yeah,
before, so.
yeah. I think that would be cool, because then I can just replace my phone. Like, my only objection to the tablet is I'd be buying another screen.
Yeah.
That I don't already use. Like, I just don't really have a use case for a tablet. You know, like, I'll just take the MacBook out and use that. It's light enough. So I've not really found the need for a tablet. But yeah, the minimal phone, if I can replace my current phone, then that would be amazing. Because I do. Then some days I'm just like, maybe I should just buy like an analog clock and just pop it in for the alarm, and just don't take the phone in and be disciplined. And it's always easier said than done.
Yeah, I mean, we have those. We have like one of those like red screened, like old school digital clocks for the alarm clock and the time and stuff, which is definitely better. But it's just, I don't know, it's just like a bad habit.
Yeah.
I've got into just having my phone around. So I was like, right, I need to really just cut it out and stop having it anywhere near me in the room. And this is like a nice halfway house where a Kindle, like, I don't read all my books on Kindles. So I don't really want to be doing that, go down that route. And then most standard ebook readers are terrible. And then you're into tablet zone. You know, I got like an old iPad I could use, but then I'm like, it's no different to having a full phone. So I ended up going with this because I was like, all right, this is, I've had it for like about a week now, and it is unengaging. Like,
that's good.
It's just not addictive. I'm not that interested in it, but I have been reading like just a whole bunch of books.
Well, that's good. It's working.
So that's good. Yeah. You know, I've got Nostra on there. I've got
everything you need, access
to various different things. But
I think because my screen time is just off the hook, and I just don't know what to do. But like, it's always something I'll acknowledge while I'm doing it, and then I'm like, all right, I'll put the phone down now. But I've already been on there for like an hour when I could have gone to bed an hour earlier.
Yeah.
And it's always Twitter and just nonsense. You know, it's just not needed, especially when you're winding down before bed. So I'm thinking minimal phone. I don't think that product's been released yet. It's just something I keep seeing on Twitter, ironically. You know, when I'm scrolling just before I go to bed.
Just doom scrolling.
Yeah. That's
just wondering if I just check like all the world's information on this like little light blue box before I go to bed. Will that help?
How will I sleep?
No. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, no one's perfect.
It's true.
Like, it's also like a great example of like knowing stuff and doing stuff are just two massively different things, where I know all the things that I need to do to be way healthier and better off than I am, and sometimes I do them.
Yeah. Like, sometimes is
like,
the key.
Consistently doing it all the time is like, I don't know.
It's hard.
Like, I mean, everything got harder like post kids.
Yeah.
Just because you feel like there's no time for anything, but I really think that's probably a cop-out answer. And it's just, I need to, I don't know, just be better.
It's discipline, isn't it? Because then you listen to like the Goggins guy, you know, like that guy will start just going on about discipline and like, and it's like, yeah, you're right. Like, I hear you. I'm not going to debate this with you. But
do you think he ever like just like has a really shit day and eats a bag of Fruity Chews?
I wonder, honestly. Like, I wonder what a bad day for him looks like.
Oh, I'm having a fruity. I'm having a sour snake. I don't care.
Doesn't go for a 50-mile run in the morning. Skips it.
Maybe he's got, the drum and bass has stopped.
Yeah, do we acknowledge that?
I think we should.
We should probably acknowledge the ambient noise at the beach today.
Yeah, we did a test recording to see if it picked up. We think it's very faint in the background, so you might hear it. But like, there's like a woman like a few parking lots down, like who's having a drum and bass session out the back of a camper van. So she's got somebody here recording her and like all sorts. I don't know if she's a particularly famous camper van based DJ, but
I don't know. That seems like a niche market.
I guess so. Well, we have said like niching down is important in the AI age. So maybe she's actually an avid listener, and that's why she wanted to get friend of the pod wanted to get her drum and bass recognised on the show.
Yeah, just seeding it. I like it.
All right.
Well, actually, it seems like she's stopped or taking a break. So, anyway, there may be some ambient noise in the background on today's episode. There may not.
That feels like a solid, unscripted cold open.
That was very good.
This is the good stuff. Welcome to episode, I think, 9.
Yeah,
9.
Damn.
9 is also the Welsh word for grandma.
Is it?
Yeah.
There you go. It's also the German word for no.
There you go. Like, it's just like one of those words that crops up everywhere, apparently, which is nice.
There you go. What do you want to talk about today?
Right. So we had no topic yesterday, and you texted me, and I said, tools. We could call it tools.
Tools it is.
I don't know.
We got the name out early this week. That
I think, unusual. Like, of all the comments that we get, a lot of people will focus on like, but
how?
But like how? Like what are you using? Like what are good tools? Like what's the tool I can buy? I think we probably have a bit of a bias to go, no, don't think of tools. Think of like the bigger thing that you could do, which is the human at the edge, or as we recently discovered when we said, we should turn that into an acronym, and then realized it would be the HATE methodology. We're like, all right, that's not an ideal.
It's memorable.
I like it because I don't care about trying to be a consultant anymore.
Yeah, and it's
so
also
it's kind
shocking.
of funny, but it's like I don't know if it's the most saleable of acronyms to go with. Like, we've got a patented HATE methodology. Do
you know what? It might just be crazy enough to work.
Maybe.
Because, you want them to be memorable, right? That's the whole point. What could be more memorable than the HATE methodology?
I always thought the point was to bullshit.
Yeah,
bullshit and confuse. I thought that's what consulting was about. But
well, we know the price of intelligence is dropping to zero, so we can't hide behind that anymore.
I don't know if intelligence was always that well integrated with consulting.
Well, that's a whole other conversation.
The price of bullshit has also dropped to zero.
We need a dedicated pod on that.
The price of bullshit is trending to zero. That'd be a great.
That's
a good solid thumbnail for YouTube there.
Yes.
All right. This is like I've reverted to cold open again.
That's all right. I mean, I feel like our entire episodes are usually just some variation on a cold open, but. Do you know what, though? We were talking just before we started about graph databases, and you mentioned something about reasoning, because I think you were playing around with DeepSeek as well and a few different models, and there was this like whole Apple paper. Did you see this? The Apple paper that was released during the week, where
basically they don't think.
Well, they're just like sophisticated pattern matching entities rather than like thinking entities or reasoning entities. Did you like dive into that? Because it seems like it's getting a bit of debate.
I don't know. I looked at it and I just thought, like the what? Like I don't know. I didn't think it was new information. I just sort of felt that like yes, this is a probabilistic like pattern matching autocomplete system that it turns out is really useful because. I mean, there's this interesting thing, right, where we have a bunch of names for things and processes that humans do that we call things like thinking and reasoning and logic and things. But like, a lot of it is under the hood probably just sophisticated pattern matching.
Yeah, I wondered to what degree human thought is just sophisticated pattern matching.
I think it's probably exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I do think that by trying to make better and better AIs, we're probably gonna like speed run like 100 years of neuroscience and figure out better how humans actually think by trying to recreate it, and we'll probably realize that it's less special. That's like that's I don't know. That's my gut feel to what happens there.
Yeah,
is that a lot of it is pattern matching. I mean, like a lot of what LLMs do is just, they blurt out an answer that they think is correct for the given words that you've provided it. So the literal, the mechanistic view of this is like, here's a set of words what do we think the next word is?
Yeah.
Bang. And we do that one. And then we go, all right, given the words that we came in and the first word we've generated, what's the next best word? Bang, that one. And then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And like that's how you generate the output. And so it really is just pattern matching based on the set of words and then the words that it's streaming out. And then the difference between like that and a thinking model is really that it almost has like a pre-built pause where it goes like, all right, well, just here's a question. Now just think about how that might go for a bit. And then it'll just like stream, and the context of like what's in the model gets bigger and bigger. But it's the model like just asking itself questions about your question. You know, it's like me and the boys thinking about thinking.
Yeah.
It's what's going on under the hood. And then it answers the question at the end of it. But because it's done all of that pre-thinking, it just has like an expanded context of like what that question might mean. And it tries and like asks questions and answers itself. And it'll be like, all right, well, Pete's asked about the weather. Oh, do I know where Pete is? Oh, he's here. All right, so they're probably asking about the weather there. Like, you know, what else might he be interested in? Do I know what day it is? Like, do I know, like, can I look something up online? Have I got a tool? And like, it'll start to ask all these questions of itself. And it turns out that just is better than just trying to answer the question directly from what you say, because usually what you say comes with a whole bunch of baggage. It's just baggage that's invisible to the person.
Yeah.
Right? Like
I mean, is there, like, just to think this one out, like, is there an element of reasoning in what you've just described, because you're essentially building out like logical chains where each step depends on the previous step? Or is that just an advanced form of pattern matching?
I'm not quite sure I get what you're saying.
Well, you've said like, okay, well, I don't have all of the context, or I don't necessarily have the answers within my training data to be able to go and make a determination based on the question that you've asked. And so what I might do then is go and use tools to figure out like where, like, you know, what is the weather in your location if I can understand your location. And like, I guess the question there is there like a chain of logic that is being established here? Like there are things I need to go and do in order to get to the answer to the question that you've asked? Or is this just like an extension on pattern matching?
I mean, I think it's all pattern matching all the way down. I think there's still like two different styles of things, right? Because you have like the chain of thought, which is the reasoning thing of just think things. And I threw in a couple of tool uses in my example, but the reality of it is you would kind of like do one loop of chain of thought, and then out of the loop it might say tool use, and then like under the hood inside like the tool, the system that's giving you this answer, it would go, you mentioned this tool, run this tool, go and get some data, now continue thinking. And so it might not necessarily be like, this is why agents cost so much more than just like a standard asking a question to an LLM. And part of it is that they actually they might use like 5 or 6, 7 or 8 API requests per question that you ask. Whereas if you're doing a call and response, it's just, I ask a question, it responds. When you're doing an agent, the agent will go, he's asked a question. What do I think about that question? Like, what might he mean? What else do I know about this person? Can I go and look up some more data from my vector database, from my graph? Like what can I do? And it like flounces around for a bit and looks at various things before it answers you, which like under the hood, what it's doing is just making several repeated calls to multiple different models, to multiple databases, to different tools, and gathering information in before it answers. But that's why the answers are so much better. In the same way that if you were a human, you would say, you know, if I just restricted you to saying like, okay, don't remember anything, like you've got amnesia, like I'm just going to Men in Black you with the red light, bang, and then I'm going to ask you a question every time, you just wouldn't give that great an answer. Like you come with a built-in memory.
That's right.
Like these don't. These come with the bit that speaks, and in that bit that speaks, they get almost this like nascent memory of just vaguely what they've read, but it's not very good. So the first step for effective AI is like the tooling around like how do you build good memory for these systems, which is about the recording, the categorization, and then the recall of those facts into the language model, so the language model can speak more concisely about facts and reasoning and various different things, because he just has a better structured set of data that he's reading from. which would be the equivalent of, I don't know, like asking someone a question but saying, look, don't answer me now, like just take an hour, go to the library, have a look online, see what you can find out, and then get back to me. It's just that in the AI world, that same thing, it wouldn't be give me an hour, it would be give me 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And so like there's a massive speed increase there.
Yeah,
So
completely.
That's
yeah, I mean, the first thing I went to was immediately thinking about how humans think and then how I think. And it's, you start to realize it's like a lot of it is just recognizing patterns in neural activation. It's associative memory or like learned associations, just like repeated experience. And then you're able to draw upon those things again and again.
Yep.
And it's just added context in the future when you come across something similar. I guess like maybe the question is like, how adept is it at dealing with like something that's completely novel? And that would be the way to prove it out, right? I mean, if you had something that's like completely novel that wouldn't necessarily have any context associated to it within a training database, then you're like, oh, okay, like I'm not going to be able to do much with this. Just like a human probably wouldn't, right?
Well,
it's got to think about something
I
like...
don't think so, right? Because every novel, to ask the question implies like a set of ideas and text, and it's not like if you're dealing with something novel, like it's very unlikely that there is an answer to the thing. So to ask a novel question is to just provide quite random entropy into the system and then see what it says back.
Yeah.
But it will recognize the words, and it will recognize that they've been put together in a way that the interesting thing is it will answer with something that comes out. And that it might be like nonsense in the sense that it just doesn't make sense. Like that. But it's probably like a good exploration of like, well, given your input and the words that you've used to describe the thing that you want, and then everything else that we know in the world, this is the area that a solution would look like. It's like it's going to do that like next one step forwards. So you could probably build like quite an interesting like evolutionary system to just test that, to say, all right, here's a bunch of information and patterns for stuff we don't know, just keep running. Like run it, give me an answer, okay, let's play that answer out, and you would probably have like a ton of dead ends that just don't go anywhere.
Yeah, true.
That it's like it will just start spouting off on stuff that then doesn't really exist. I mean, you could then feed that back into systems that try and make stuff exist in code or in simulations or something, but like I don't think it would have I don't think it would struggle with novel stuff. I think it would take it in its stride. I mean, I guess you could just type a bunch of random text that just is meaningless into...
Yeah. I mean, there's also something definitionally about what is novel. Like if we're capable of trying to ascribe what is novel to an idea or a concept, like how novel is it? Like how many other humans have thought this through? Well, and how much context exists on that thing.
And at a base level, right? Like if you're using words to describe it, the words aren't novel. You know the words. It knows the words. It knows the other words that tend to follow words like the words you've used. And so it pattern matches on those and says like you must be in this sort of space of knowledge. Like it's interesting, like to think about. But I was keen today. An area I was keen to get into was I feel like I've been using tools a lot. So one of the things we've, yes, as I said, like I guess we have this like tendency to push towards human at the edge, and it might make it sound like we don't actually just use these things as tools in their own right. But I think that wouldn't be true. Like I guess the way we would usually frame this when we're talking with like different businesses is like, the first thing to use is to use these as tools. It's just probably not where the final value is, right? Like it's really useful to, use ChatGPT or Claude as like just like a partner to brainstorm with, to help you write emails, whatever it is that you do a lot of. You can use that to speed up that specific process. The reason it's not where the main value is you're still the bottleneck. And like I was talking to the wife and she said like, I would have a problem where I would go and I would record like as an input, I will just dictate to Otter in the car all about a particular project I'm trying to work on, I'll make a proposal for, and it will gather up all those ideas and transcribe them really well for me, and that's an AI tool that does a thing. And then I come along and I'll have to then copy and paste it into a new system and then get that to write some stuff, and then I'll copy and paste that into a new system and then that writes some stuff. And you said, and it just feels like it's all integrated through the swivel chair,
Yes.
as we talked about. Like, it's a person at a keyboard integrating all these systems, but they're all computers. And it's like, that's like, just, they should all just talk to each other, and I shouldn't be involved. If all I'm doing is copying and pasting, that's no job. That's a job for a computer. So you should be able to hook all of those things together, and I think that's the guts of like the workflow technologies and the process thinking that has the big impact. And that's great, that's a human at the edge, but you really just can't ignore that those individual tools are just massively useful to a lot of productive thinking. And one area I was dealing with was like, well, why is it that like Cursor has got like so much traction as an AI tool versus, like, I don't know, Copilot running inside a GitHub repo? Or like I think I started thinking about this because I was playing around with Codex, which is on the like pro plans for OpenAI. There's like a few different tools you can get, like Sora for your video generation, and like Codex is one where you can just give it access to your GitHub repo and then just set it tasks to do in the background. So you can say, like, okay, go find me a bug in this program, describe the bug, and then write me a pull request to resolve that bug. And it will download your whole repo, set up the system inside a VM, run it, write code, test it, and you end up with like a pull request that you can use or not that just shows up in GitHub. And I was like, this is cool. Yeah. Like, this is the sort of thing that I would like. But there was... It got me thinking, because I was like, you know what, I also pay for like one of the things that's really obvious experimenting with all these things is I pay so much goddamn money. Yeah. Like,
I was going to say this, yeah.
It's like there's like a few $100s over here.
There's this money going out
for OpenAI, there's like a few $100s to Claude, and then you've got the API costs, and then you've got like all the different systems that you want to try and just see where the value of. And you know, I feel like it's part of the business really is to say, all right, well, I'm going to go and try all the tools and then tell you which ones are actually useful. Yeah. So there's that angle to it. But
I think to answer your initial...
Well, hang on, let me finish the point though, because it was... Okay. I was saying, like, because what I realized is I use like OpenAI a lot. Like, and O3 is a really good model, but I almost do all of my development and planning inside Cline, which is like Cursor, but a little bit different. It's like Cursor with no limits on your API use. So, but you pay through the nose for it. I was like, well, why am I not using this directly, like in OpenAI? Because I've already got the model here. It does all the smart stuff. And I feel like a big part of it is the context management of just, well, like, because it's on my computer in Cline, and I've downloaded all my code to my computer, and I can just put the agent in the file system. It now has access to all the files. It can read whatever it wants, it can download whatever it wants. Whereas trying to like just, there's something that's like a little bit spookier and weirder than giving like a remote computer access to all of my, I don't know, like Google Drive or all of my GitHub repos that I'm like, I don't really want you to have unfettered access to this stuff. But if you're like on my computer and you've only got what's on my computer, and if I want to make a change to something, I can just write a file and just chuck it in the same folder, and now you can see it. That's really like intuitive in a way that I quite like.
How's this different from Cursor?
Well, I think, no, that's what I'm saying. Like Cursor and Cline work in that same way of like having the files close to the thing, whereas something like Codex, it feels like that should be the answer. But it's not popular in the same way as Cursor and Cline. Is the point? Is that like what it should be a better user experience, and in some ways more intuitive for me to just go to the repo and say, be better, you know, build this thing, do this, document that, and then just have those tasks running in the background. But it just doesn't. I don't know what it is. Like, it doesn't hit the same buttons. Like, I don't get the same dopamine hit from the thing. Like there's something here that I think, this is why I just wanted to finish that thought, is like there's something there that's worth exploring, to say, why is one of them draws me in, and like I could spend all day working on it and just making everything slightly better, like bit after bit. And I don't know whether it is just because it exists on the computer, because now the thing in the air, in this Codex thing, is there. It's got access to all the files. It can read everything that I need. But I'm like, nah, it seems a bit slow. And like, even though, so instead I just walk over here and spend like hundreds more dollars locally on my computer. I'm like, why am I doing that?
Yeah.
It seems counterintuitive. Like, that's the bit that got me.
I mean, I can only answer this from my own perspective. There's probably an element of Occam's razor tied into all of this, which is just the simplest answer is probably the most correct one here. I think it's just created the most hype. That's the one everyone gravitates to, which is Cursor. In the same way that ChatGPT is just a bit of a verb now. Like, everyone just gravitates towards ChatGPT as their language model of choice because it's just there. It's the big one. Everyone knows about it. There's a lot more hype around it. Like, I personally use Claude, like, I'd say 80% of the time. And so, yeah, I think I just gravitated toward Cursor because you just see everyone building with Cursor.
Yeah.
In the same way that, like, I don't know anyone that uses Windsurf. But
uses Windsurf. Yeah, nobody knows anybody that uses Windsurf.
It's
it
a weird thing,
exist.
but it's similar, right?
It's definitely money laundering. That seems to be the online.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
Idea.
I mean, I don't know anyone that uses it. I don't see anyone building stuff with it and, like, showing what they're building with Windsurf. So I don't know. I just feel like that's the simple thing. It's like, when you find the thing that works for you, do you not just stick with it to some degree? I mean, I don't know. Like, I found myself just going deeper with Cursor and not trying every new tool that comes out because I just want to.
Like, the bit that doesn't jive to me then is that I did use Cursor and then I switched to Cline, and I also used
Replit.
To be honest, I haven't really used Replit that much. And again, Replit feels like it should be a better solution than Cursor and Cline.
I started with Replit.
I don't know what it is that doesn't draw me in about it.
But I couldn't stick with Replit. I don't know why.
So why was that?
I don't know. I honestly think it's like a user experience thing. Like, Replit is, like, say, marginally busier as a user experience, which for me just
because it does everything in that
everything
one browser
is there.
window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it felt a little bit more intuitive to navigate around Cursor than something like Replit, even though I can see the value in using something like Replit, but it hasn't grabbed me the way I thought it might. Whereas Cursor, like, you're right about the dopamine, right? Whether that's intentional or unintentional, you do get those dopamine rushes from using Cursor and then seeing the progress appear on screen. Like, I find that quite interesting. That works for someone like me.
Yeah.
And then that's also highly motivational as well, because as you see your progress, you natively just want to keep going and keep building. And I think the other problem with all of this stuff is, like, for someone like me, I've almost felt like this has been really bad from an ADHD perspective, because I just want to start a dozen different things at once and just not finish any of them.
That is hard.
And so, that's been a real challenge. Like, I must have, like, at least 10 projects on the go at the moment. But I just, I've got to come up with systems to just manage this stuff. And
well, that's why we have to start a business around, like, AI automation. So we've got a reason to explore and use all of the things.
But a lot of it is just pure experimentation, right? It's not like, I'm not trying to natively build something and release it to an audience. I'm just thinking, there's an idea. What's the technical complexity here? Can I build it? And I find that's, like, enough of an animus for me to just get started with it.
Yeah. I mean, I find that because most of the cutting edge stuff and most of the tools and techniques and, like, everything that's happening is being done in the space of software development, partly because it's the software developers going like, "Ooh, if I build this, I don't have to do something." And, like, software developers have spent their entire career basically trying to put themselves out of work. So, so it's kind of like they're one of the few industries that's naturally just going to automate its own job. And so it's a good one to look at to see how it works. But yeah, like, there's been a bit of talk online recently about, like, what's Cursor for PowerPoint or whatever, and I'm like, it's Canva. I don't know.
I
Like
think so.
we already have that. Like
Yeah.
PowerPoint's not that complex that you probably need it. But I do wonder like are these things going to be web apps? And I think I mentioned this to you the other day. Is it's like there's a whole bunch of just extra nonsense to deal with when you do everything online in a kind of like web app first way, in a SaaS way, that causes you to have to like deal with like large files and where do you put them and how do you secure them and like tracking like all the stuff where you're like, oh, if I don't care about your files because they're yours and they're not mine, like I don't even want to see them. I don't want to know they exist. I don't want to have to manage all the encryption and retrieval, and like you can't just chuck them on the server because that servers don't tend to have massive storage for files. Like that's use something else for that, so now you've got like multiple different services that are all talking to each other. And it's like, well, why don't I just run, and obviously when you're doing your own development, you just run everything locally, and it's just there, and you just put it there because you don't care because it's on your computer, and your computer's got actually plenty of grunt. It's got plenty of storage. Like often your particular laptop would have more power than like the share of what you're getting on a server that somebody's running, even if the server costs them shit tons of money. But it's distributed, it's yours, it's there, so you can just use it for free. And it's like, maybe these things just need to be like way more local, and we only like send and receive files when we really need to, but we just do a lot of the processing and the heavy lifting like with files and context locally, because as soon as it's local, well, now I've got like a native interface for just managing files and context, and then like when I want to like sort them and process them, maybe that's something that I then store online. Like so I take my files, I put them in a folder. That's a really nice user experience that everybody kind of gets, but you need an app on the computer or whatever to do that. But then I could then loop through all of those files, read them all, and process them for facts and quotes and ideas and things, and then build my own personal knowledge graph of like, well, what's in my files? And that could live on my computer, or that could live on a trusted server that I have if I want to use it in multiple places. But or I could have multiple localized versions that all sync over Nostr. Like there's a lot of different ways to architect that, and I'm increasingly thinking that these things should be like heavily localized. I mean, particularly like personal knowledge graphs, it just feels like a little bit of a dystopia that these things are going to go into Google when they could just be things that live on your MacBook sort of thing.
Yeah, but I mean, depends who's using them, right? I think a lot of people are going to be concerned about the privacy aspect here as well, especially if in a corporate setting, like essentially trusting your data to big tech is probably something that people are uneasy about anyway.
I think it's the sort of thing that people say they're uneasy about. They should be uneasy about
and just do it,
and then they just do it because it's slightly easier.
I certainly think that's the case in a lot of small to medium-sized businesses anyway, because it's
even in the big ones. It's all, a lot of stuff is security theatre for a lot of these things, and then like there'll be a lot of like positioning about how we keep all of these various like secrets safe and like what we're doing, and then. But I mean, unless you're literally monitoring like every USB, and a lot of people will do this, like all the USB devices that are plugged in everywhere, or like anybody that brings a laptop in from somewhere else, and like there's always ways to get, if you've got something that's particularly secret, like I can just take a picture of a screen, like it's not like hard to get information out if you needed to do that, but it's I don't know.
There is this idea though around building for yourself, the audience of one. We kind of talked about that a little bit last week. I mean, I've found myself just doing this a lot. If there's something I was doing in spreadsheets for the most part, like I built a little net wealth tracker recently as well. But it's like, it doesn't have like the full dashboard, with graphs and all that kind of shit. Like I just felt like a lot of that stuff is a bit superfluous. Like you don't actually, like that's just ingratiating yourself to some degree when you see the line go up on a graph. It's just not really that necessary. So
this little line goes up. What are you doing? Share the secrets.
There we go. I'll write a book.
We need lines that go up.
I'll write
on
a book
that
on that later. But that's because I just found, especially when you're running your own business, and you don't have the...
That's not the secret to lines going up.
No, it's that lines going down for the most part. But, you know, like, you know,
every now and
like
again.
a lot of these products are built for people who have the consistent weekly pay slip that comes in, and then the money gets distributed into your, you know, your 401k, your superannuation, and part of it will go into an investment account. Some goes into a savings account. It's all very like logical and linear, but when, as you know, when you're running your own business, it's a little bit more ad hoc. And so you kind of need something that just works for you a little bit more natively. And so, like, I've been using spreadsheets for years to manage some of this stuff. And yeah, it doesn't need to be a dashboard. Like, I think everything is, like, everyone tries to build the next dashboard for this stuff. And I've just found, like, all I really want is to be able to, like, upload CSVs with a whole heap of data and then get quick visualization on it. And that just gives me, you know, a rough guide and progress. But, you know, I was something I was playing around with on the weekend was like this, it's like trying to figure out if you could combine, like, you know, like a really basic habit tracker with AI as like an accountability partner. So it's not just you talking to a language model, it's reading what your goals are, monitoring your progress, but then sending you, I don't know, like little check-ins periodically throughout the day to make sure you're actually on track with stuff, and it will be able to notice, oh, it's like you've kind of skipped a couple of days here, like what's going on. And like, you know, Duolingo will do this kind of like a little bit abstractly when you're not actually doing the work. It'll send you like a passive aggressive email to be like, you know, are you still going to learn, like, are you still going to learn French? It's like, no, I've given up, I can't take it anymore. And so I was like, and again,
See, I was going to, and then it turned out that almost everybody that speaks French is French.
Yes, exactly.
So, like,
Don't need to
what's
now.
the
They've got
what's
it
the
covered.
payoff here?
They've got it covered. But, you know, like, because I think traditionally something like that would be like one of those like Turpit ideas. Is it Turpit? You know, it's like where it's like high technical complexity but low
I don't know what a
scale.
Turpit thing is. What's
I think
that?
this is one of those like Y Combinator things where it's like they've come up with this idea around how to value a startup idea.
Okay.
So I think it's like, if you've got something that's like a high degree of technical complexity to build, but then not particularly scalable, you should probably avoid that. So I think that's an example maybe where, you know, you may be trying to build something that's like, there's not really that big an audience for, or there's so much competition for similar sort of habit trackers to get any kind of cut through in the market is going to be difficult. So maybe this isn't a good use of your time or capital. But when you cut the complexity around building some of this stuff, where you can just build it for yourself and run it locally, that's where I'm like, okay, this is interesting, because I know that I've got an issue managing a dozen different projects here, and staying focused and motivated on any one of them to see them through to completion is a challenge. Maybe what I need is a little accountability partner, and I'll just try and build that for me. But also, I'm just doing it to learn, because something like that will help me figure out, okay, how do I manage the API integrations into a product from ChatGPT, like, which I've not really tried to do much of.
So, might have something for you.
Oh, okay, here we go.
Because I last night started a new project.
There we go.
As I do.
Good.
On an evening. Sorry, I was just playing footsie under the table there. I should probably stop that. I almost burst
It's not
out.
that kind of podcast.
Yeah, I know. I almost burst out laughing a minute ago, and the crows started, and I was like, I was about to go into the crow impression again, but I'll save it.
Crow impression was a big hit.
Yeah. That was probably our best rated podcast so far.
Yeah.
So it's probably true.
the impression.
Crow. No, I don't have the energy for it. Maybe later. So obviously when we were working with StackWork, like I think a lot of this comes back down to like a central problem with AIs, which is we don't have a good solution yet for memory and fact recall, and I don't know, like context composition. Like, it's kind of how I'm framing it in my head, which is we have tools. And we have things like RAG systems where we'll lock stuff up, and they generally work through this process of like vectorization and comparing vectors, which sounds complex. It's roughly a case of like there's a bunch of words, and I'll take those words and I'll turn them into a mathematical representation of those words that I can compare now with a different mathematical representation of some words for closeness. And what it allows you to do is to, instead of matching, Andy sat on a dog. Sorry, I don't know why. Why would you do that? It goes like Andy sits on a chair would match, because it would go, oh, it's a like sentence. Andy sits on a bench. Andy sits on an elephant. Yep. Like, there you go. I mean, all more appropriate than the dog. Work, So, look into that. Yep. It's like, and it allows you to do that work like inside maths. So what we do in a lot of AI systems, and this is kind of like the vanilla quick build version of something that you might see as like an AI agent or an AI chatbot on a website or something. It's usually got like a vector database behind that. They've dumped a bunch of text in it. They've taken like blocks of that text, vectorized it, and then they use a RAG lookup, which is effectively saying like, take the question, convert it into this maths representation, see what it matches closest to out of these, and you'll get like a chunk of text or two back that then give you some context. Now the problem is you've only matched on like that chunk of text, and so you have this like weird thing where the context you pull back is kind of the text, but it kind of works like if there's like a direct quote that you've asked for and there's a quote in the document that you've got, you'll probably get back something that answers the question. But it doesn't give you like a realistic representation of what's going on.
Like a rich context.
Yeah, and so the way that was solved in Stackwork, which they're quite public about this, I don't know if anyone will care, talking about it, was like to use graph RAG systems.
Yep.
So this became big in like, I think it was weirdly like BlackRock and Microsoft released a research paper on it, maybe like a year, maybe not quite that long, maybe 9 months ago, something like that. And it was saying like, oh, these things outperform by like 50%. Like if you, instead of using vectors, you use vectorized like graph databases.
Yeah.
And the idea is it's almost like a two-stage thing to think about it, where you would go, all right, find me like a chunk of text that's inside this whole graph database that matches like these embeddings. So we still do the embedding style search, but when you find that first node, what we can do is a graph is effectively like a set of facts with relationships between them. And so it could be like, you'll find like a quote, and it will go, this quote is part of this paragraph, and this paragraph is part of this file, and like this quote is also like this quote over here, and the same person that said this, and this. And so instead of just pulling the quote, you can pull the quote plus information about who said it, plus information about how it exists inside the paragraph, and like anything else that's associated with that inside that big knowledge graph. And so what you get is this like much richer, quicker way to retrieve and structure facts that is way more information dense. Instead of just like every occurrence of something that sounds a bit like the thing you said, which is what you'll get from the RAG database. And then you get, like, if you scale that database up and you put more and more documentation in it, it's just going to give you worse and worse results as you go. It looks really good when you've got like 10 pages in a PDF, you chuck it in, you ask it questions, and you're like, this thing's fucking magic.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like if you try and run something serious on it, it's going to really struggle. And so I think the answer to that is, I think Stackwork are correct on this, is it's graphs.
Yeah.
And so like I enjoyed that. Like when I was doing the bounty program for those guys, we would have these like self-improving graph RAG based workflows where, I would be writing a bounty, and the first thing that happens when I write a bounty is I stub out, the 10 things that I think are important in this bounty. Like these things would be like a job task description length, and they need to be pretty detailed. And I would put it into the workflows that I designed, and the first thing the workflow would do is say, all right, well, all the things that Pete's trying to do, let's vectorize that and let's go and look it up in the graph. And it goes and gets like the 20 closest matching bounties that existed that look like that. And then it will, it'll write me a draft version of the bounty, then it'll write me some unit tests, then it'll write me some code against the unit tests, and then it'll write me like a full bounty at the end of it and then spit it out. And then I'll review it, adjust it as required, and then issue that bounty. And when I issue the bounty, that bounty now goes back into the graph database. And so what happened is, as I did more of the similar task, the output and the ability for the machine to just generate better and better bounties from fewer and fewer facts just ramped up. Because like every time I did some work, it then added to this self-corrected loop where you go, all right, I've now got a much better example of previous bounties that look like this as inputs. So here's the best one. Let's select that, and then let's move on. And I think that sort of system, you sort of need something like that where you can just ingest an awful lot of data, structure it in a way that then you can create these like self-reinforcing like learning loops. It's not necessarily that you're training a model, which is the sort of thing people say, and what they mean is they've attached a RAG database and a PDF to the thing, which is okay, that's a thing. But you can really have this like a system that appears to get cleverer over time, despite the fact that nothing changed inside the system. The model is still the same. The model is really just translating the answers you've just given it to you. What you're doing is you're providing it better and better context, and the context is selected from your own actions over time. I really think this is the key to building these systems. So
the observation I have here is that like most people's criticism is that you just have high rates of hallucination. So if you've got a graph database with the ability to learn and self-improve over time with that rich context, presumably you're going to lower the rates of
this is exactly how you get rid of it. It's like saying, you know, you wouldn't expect a child to know every fact. You teach the children facts first, and then they start to recall them. You know, the same thing. It's like we fill this graph database with the facts that are meaningful to you, and now it's going to be able to. The job of the, like, this is an interesting one. I think passes by so many people, and I don't know if we talked about like. I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast. I feel like we talk about it in like the workshops and things, which is that, you know, the job of the LLM isn't to be everything. It's not this like amazing paradigm of new computing, and therefore the old computing is dead. All old computing still exists and is as powerful as ever. And we've got like one new tool that sits in the box, which is LLMs. And what LLMs are specifically good at is translating stuff into and out of human language. So they can pull ideas out of human language into structure, and they can take structure and they can put it into human language. And like that is just such a superpower. But it's not the whole thing. And so if we say like, okay, well, it's good for that bit, it's good for the thinking, like it's good for challenging stuff, it's good for reasoning something, it's good for like just introducing entropy into this system and seeing where we go. Like, you know, there's all sorts of things that it can do. It's not better than just writing something down and then reading it back when you need to recall a fact. So we just shouldn't get rid of that. It'd be like telling somebody that you can never write anything down. You have to remember everything in your head. And then just expecting that person to be a high performer. And they're like, yeah, but like sometimes I like make a note on my, you know, no, you can't do that. You've got to remember everything. Like that's how we treat these things.
That's
like,
our schooling system,
just
Pete.
let them write. Well, at least
you're describing my year 12 exams.
Okay. But I mean, like, at least at school, you are allowed to write stuff in your book beforehand.
That's true.
And that helps reinforce it in your head. But it's insane that we would think that that's the correct way to deploy these things. It's like, no, don't assume that it knows everything. Like, assume that what it's good at is taking a set of facts that you tell it and then telling you the fact afterwards in a really nice way. That's what it does. It's like the front man.
I think the other thing is
it's the front man to computing systems. It's Mick Jagger to the computing Rolling Stones. Is he the right one? Who knows? Who gives a fuck?
He is.
He's the front man,
definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing is like contextual awareness for different scenarios, right? If you're in a company, it's like what information is important to know here? And then what information are you adding to the graph over time? You know, it's not necessarily a case that it should know everything, it just needs to know the things it ought to know. And I think that's the critical distinction as well. Whereas you've got like the existing language models that you might use with ChatGPT and Claude, these like really general purpose models that are very broad.
Well, and this is where we get into the complexity of this. It's not like, oh, just use a graph. It's like, okay, well, what's your ontology for the information that you're storing? And you're like, it's like, what? Like the information, it's a PDF or something. You're like, no, that's not the point. Is what we want this thing to do is to ingest, transform, and store the information so that it will be more useful for factory call at a later date. And like sometimes it's factory call, sometimes it's something else. Like it depends on what you're trying to achieve with the system. So I think I started off by saying I might have something for you.
Oh yes.
So the new project that I was doing was like, look, I've kind of been waiting for somebody else to do it and nobody did. So I'm just going to half-ass a quick version of a personal knowledge graph
Yep.
that I can just start running to start developing the. Well, it's not going to be that half-assed, enough, for all honesty, but
Yes.
there'll be no UI. It'll be nothing fancy. It'll be a couple of Docker containers that I can just spin up on the machine with like an API-based interface, so that I can then start adding it into different tools. But I want all the data to be local on my machine, because I'm like, you know what, all the files that I care about are on my machine.
Exactly.
I just, if I start trying to integrate it with all these different systems and all these things that I'm gonna spend
it's a pain.
I can spend years doing all this stuff, but they're all on the same computer. So why don't I just put the thing on my computer and then go, here's all the stuff, like just fill your boots. And then I'll start just building out my own full knowledge graph of this thing. And as I watch YouTube stuff, or as I watch, read articles, I'll just tag them into the knowledge base and say, look, this is all stuff that I care about. Decompose, give me the facts, give me the quotes, give me the relationships between different things, and just start storing it. And then I'll make that accessible to the various LLMs and things that I use. So, and I think that's going to be useful, because one of the things that came up recently was the wife's been writing a book.
Yes.
It's going well.
Yeah.
So it is a book on, is it on AI? I'd say sort of. It's AI adjacent.
Yes.
So it's called The Human Edge. Shout out to Beth Ann Wynn and The Human Edge.
Yeah.
Be released soon. Get your pre-orders in. She's really looking about like, what does it mean to be human in this world? Like where does the human retain some knowledge? Like, how would you work with AI as opposed to against AI? Like, what does it mean to accept it? It's a very interesting book. So
Looking forward to reading that.
Yeah, but one of the things is in writing that book, it becomes obvious that writing is definitely a thing that you should be using AI for and with, but it's still a pain because there's no cursor for writing, right? But what you want is something where you go, I all the stuff is on my computer. I'm writing stuff, I'm writing files, I'm writing text. There's a million different programs that already exist that are great for formatting text. You don't necessarily need to recreate all these things. But when it actually then comes down to getting the AI to look at something, you're kind of just copying and pasting random text into a website and going from there. And it's it feels like that's not the end goal, is it? Ideally, you want some smart AI on your computer here, where you can just it sees everything you're working on, because it's there, because it's on your computer, which is one of the few places you might have that stuff is available. God, the waves are just crashing. Sorry,
dumping.
That was a big one. There's a guy he hasn't. Oh, there he is. He's popped up. That's good. Not dead.
Can you imagine little surf and rescue mission mid-pod?
Yeah, Day's not dead. Someone's still there.
So I think I asked you, when we were talking about this offline, what's the technical complexity behind building something like this? Because I know that's natively the first question I ask, because I'm still trying to learn a lot of this stuff. But I'm sure a lot of people are just okay, what's the chasm I need to cross to be able to build something like this for myself? How hard is it?
Oh, to do it locally on your machine, or just. I mean, it's easier than trying to build web apps for the most part, because you can build a web app but just has access to files. That solves a big problem for you, and it solves the integration, because you just create a file and read it. Weirdly, this is how a lot of high performance compute works. In a way, it's not obvious to people, which is that when you run, if you're running a drug discovery pipeline that processes 50 million proteins in, an hour, like I did once, with shout out Harinder for building that, which has dropped the cost of drug discovery by about 100x with the people we were working with, which is quite cool. When you do that, you have effectively 10 different computers that exist in a row. They only exist for minutes at a time, and they all have a specific job, and the way you move the data between them is that you write a file. You use that high performance file systems, which is interesting. So, but technical complexity for building it, I don't think it's that hard. I find that I think it's just thinking in systems, right? If you're like a a product manager or somebody that's been used to working with technology and applications and stuff, but you're not a coder, I think you're in a pretty strong position.
Yeah.
Because you know how these things come together, you know what to expect about the different bits that need to be built, and why you would organize them in a different way. You just didn't necessarily know how to push the buttons to make it happen. Somebody else, sorry, that sounds really glib. Like that was like a serious impediment. Like you just couldn't build anything because you couldn't write the code. It turns out like the AIs are actually quite good at writing the code if you constrain them really well.
Yeah.
So it really is more about understanding different software development processes and like architecture and how to do that. Now, that's not simple. Like it would probably be wrong to suggest that this is as simple as talking apps into existence. You could probably go a long way doing that, in all honesty.
Yeah.
Particularly if you weren't trying to build something that needed to be used by anybody else.
Yes.
And ran locally on your machine. You could build a terribly inefficient thing that was entirely insecure, but doesn't matter because you're not, it's just on your machine.
Yes.
So the security comes from, so to be honest, I think, yeah, maybe I'm just second guessing myself as I say it, but I actually think the technical complexity is probably low. I think you can just vibe code this into existence.
That's interesting. Yeah.
You could talk this into existence using something like Cursor and Cline. Yeah.
I think that's interesting.
You could definitely fuck up and lose a lot of time though.
Yeah.
Like,
But that's also fine. Like, I mean, for me, that's also fine because I think I look at this stuff through the lens of how to learn and then what it enables. Because there's like a lot of ideas that just like will pop into my head while I'm doing something completely orthogonal. And it's because, you know, there's this enabling function where you're like, oh shit, I didn't know I could do this. Like, maybe I could do that somewhere else. And then there's just like these weird synapses that kick in and you're just like, oh yeah, cool, I'll go. And this is where the ADHD is a bit of a problem because then you just like, you drop what you were doing and you go start something else. But
yeah, we can't solve for that yet.
That's a challenge. But I'm like thinking about this through my own lens here and like, could I have a crack at doing something like this with like almost like zero-based knowledge? Because I do think there are probably people like me who listen to this pod and they're like, okay, how accessible is this stuff? And like for me, my gut instinct would just be like, oh, I'm just gonna have a go and see where it lands.
But you've had success with this,
I
right?
have,
do you want to talk about any of that? Or like...
Well, yeah, I mean, I think for me, the technical complexity is, I kind of keep surprising myself with how much I'm able to overcome. But then I'm always conscious of not falling into this like Dunning-Kruger trap where I feel like I know more than I do. And so I'll often just stop what I'm doing, go back to Claude and just ask it a bunch of questions because this is like my own kind of, I don't know, like it's maybe a lack of confidence building this stuff still where I'm like, I don't know what I don't know. Help me navigate, you know, where I'm actually at with this right now. And I'll just ask a bunch of stupid questions and I'll get a bunch of basic answers back. But it's great because then I'll be like, oh yeah, I actually know like 4% of what I ought to know about what I'm doing right now. And that's great, like, you know, because I'm self-aware. But I think it'd be super easy to fall into this Dunning-Kruger trap where you're like, oh, this is easy. Heck yeah. Like, I'm just going to keep building this thing. But, I mean, I've started playing with how to build out synthetic audiences, which we've kind of talked a little bit about. Probably save that for a future episode. But I did kind of pitch this idea to some people last week, and they were like, "Oh, if you build this, like, send us where to send money, like, because this is really interesting." And that's the first time I've ever had that from something that I've started building. So I'm like, "Oh, cool, like that's nice." But synthetic audiences, I think, are a really good idea for AI to be able to basically simulate a real world environment to see how like humans might engage with a thing. It might be content, it might be, you know, ad creative, it's a whole bunch of things. But I think maybe we go into that in another pod. But there was like a huge amount of what I considered technical complexity around building that. And it is complex. But I've been able to navigate it with the help of Claude for the most part.
One of the things that you mentioned to me previously was about like just the benefit of slowing down with this sort of thing, which is, you know, it's like the slow food movement for code. It's like the slow code I'm not gonna just vibe code. I'm actually gonna like treat it as a learning experience, and it's just like I learn so much more by doing. So I'll do, but then because I'll slow it down, I'll actually learn as well as I go. And it's just saying that like I'm happy to just throw stuff away. Like I had a whole day's work the other day that I just put a bullet in. And I was just like, that feature branch is going to be deleted. Like I don't know where I was going with this. I think I feel like I made bad architectural decisions, and then I was like, you know what, I can't roll this forward. It's just going to be too painful later on. So I'm just going to go back to the main branch and just going to fork again and do the next best thing. So I mean, certainly like if you are going to do these things, like getting a really good I think I'm gonna start putting this together into like, I don't know, an article or a course or something like so again, like if a bunch of people have said like you need to if you're getting good at this, can you teach us how to be good at it, because this is such an unlock for technical people, where like I feel like I'm like a good mastery of Git and like just how to like segregate and remerge your work and work in a way where it's kind of natural to developers that work in distributed teams or open source projects are kind of used to these things as second nature. Like it was always like, from the roles that I had, it was always like just that little bit removed that like, again, like I had a lot of awareness of it, but I didn't really know. I can never remember the commands. Like still to this day, I just always new window Claude. How do I? What's the Git command again for this? Like just give me them all. Give me them all. Give me the Git cheat sheet. And it's, again, it's the sort of thing that should be bookmarked, and then I just look at it, but I just regenerate it from scratch every time, charging Anthropic like 10 cents, whatever it is, and just burning.
This was one of the first things I asked Claude to help me figure out, actually.
How to use Git.
How to use Git, And it's now I just think about it as like it's second nature to me, which is kind of crazy, because that was only a few months ago.
But it's like, and then you've got to, then the trick is to fucking remember to do it. Because you'll just go like, oh I'm making progress. I'm making progress. I'm making progress. This is going so well. It's going so well. It's going so well. Oh no, I fucked everything up. Oh shit, I forgot to check anything in. Oh bollocks. Like, how am I going to get back?
Before I start any new branch, I basically will push it to Git. And then, but the thing is, I've planned for this ahead of time with Claude. So when I'm building out that roadmap, I have like these natural checkpoints already there. And you hit the checkpoint and you're like, okay, great. This is where I'm going to go back to Claude and ask for all of those commands again because I've forgotten them. And it's going to help me push that back to Git. And then you've got this lovely version control as well. But you know, like, just to hammer this point about, what was it, slow code? That's nice framing, I like that. But there's also a paradox there, right?
Slow code is fast as well.
Well, that's I was just about to say.
Sorry.
There's this paradox.
Shush, everyone forget that.
I'll change the paradox. I'll alter the paradox now. We got fighter jets going by. That's
fighter jets, waves, drum and bass. Like, this is an ambient pod.
Why wouldn't you want a pod at the beach? It's
I don't know why more people don't record podcasts at the beach.
It's crazy, isn't it? Anyways, the paradox that's interesting is like, I'm slow coding, but I'm also speed running a bunch of mistakes that other developers have made over the course of years and years. You know, like when you talk about just like binning a bunch of work that you've done, like I do that all the time, but it's not just forgotten. There's been a bunch of lessons that I'll learn from it. And sometimes I'll like jot them down, or I'll talk to Claude about it, and I'll just be like, hey, I think I've completely balls this. Like, what do you think? And a couple of times it's actually gone...
Bird in the van.
We've even got a bird visiting us.
Don't shit on the bed.
But yeah.
It was a flying bird.
There was
like, just for the English in the audience.
An actual...
like...
Yes. Yeah, so anyway, I think that's, I've kind of lost my train of thought.
The paradox of slow code.
But I'm like speed running a bunch of mistakes, I think, and learning by doing it that way, by slowing down. Because I'm actually not motivated by trying to build something and release it and ship it and sell it.
And also, you as a single person, learning from scratch with no developers around you, are cranking out and shipping code faster than a team often is, which is fucking nuts.
Yes. I mean, especially when... I mean, this is a gift for me because I've always had the harebrained ideas. I know we've talked about this in the past, and now I can just be testing them but I'm also learning. And so the next time I have a harebrained idea, I'm like, do you know what? I can build that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, so that like list of ideas that never were.
Yeah.
I should revisit those. I just stick them in Obsidian and then just forget that I've
about
got
them.
a set of ideas. Every now and again I'll search ideas and I was like, oh shit, I didn't realise I had all those notes about all these different things. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, the latest one I've been playing around with is just getting into N8N and experimenting with workflows. And this is another thing that I looked at and I was like, God, like I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then I just started chatting to Claude and I'm like, all right, this is what I think I want to achieve. And I basically created a workflow to create YouTube Reels from a YouTube video. It could be any YouTube video. So basically like it will download that video from YouTube as the first step. Then it will generate the transcript, turn that in, like identify where the actual the 30-second to 1 minute reels might be within that, and then it will go and clip the video, generate the captions, add the captions, and then it will basically just store a bunch of reels in my on my MacBook. And I'm like, when I did it, I was like, oh shit, like that's cool. It's like I didn't think I would be able to do that, but then also it's not something I'm necessarily trying to do, because in my mind I'm like, that's just slop content. Like I don't necessarily want to be like churning out a bunch of reels for the sake of it. But it was just an interesting use case. Well, I mean, I think like for our podcast, like great. But in this case I was like, can I just take like a long form interview that's on YouTube and just like cut that down into a bunch of clips.
Bunch of highlights.
Yeah. And so like that's where I started, but then I was like, okay, one of the things I've been thinking about lately is when we do a podcast each week, we've got the long form source, and then I tend to go off and do like maybe one post on LinkedIn about it. Like in the main,
definitely need to do more.
Just general though.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, so I've been looking into this idea of creating content waterfalls based on like the main, like one main kind of source material. So we've got an hour and a bit every week, and then I do one post, which just seems time consuming and a bit of a waste, but we could definitely chunk that into, in theory, dozens of different posts.
Yeah.
And then like dozens of different tweets and so I've been thinking about like, how do you like create the workflow to just get this into chunks? And so I started playing around with that in N8N. And for me, it's not necessarily to automate the entire thing, it's just to get it into chunk form, and then I'm going to then go and edit it and make it sound more like me.
To edit the chunks. Yeah. I mean, I've also got like 90% of that largely built in an app, but it's just so much less inspiring to me than Beacon.
Yes.
So like particularly this week I've gone like, no, I need to get this done and out, and so I've just flipped back to that this week as my main thing, which I'm just going to cryptically leave out there.
Yep. Well, I've done that twice now today. We've essentially dangled two different products that we've got in the studio.
I mean, this is like the thing that I've most wanted to build for a year at least now.
Yep.
And I've just not had the time. And I think as we've got like more and more stuff coming up, I'm like, I really need to take advantage of this
exactly.
period of time and just make sure version 1 of this is shipped and in use in the target market with the right activists to make it land. So
yeah. I should also just, as an aside, seeing as we're like dropping little hints of products,
just hints.
I should also just say, because I've brought up the Mario-inspired platformer game a couple of times. It's now an other stuff platformer game.
Oh, right.
And I've been working on like the Pete character sprite for the game, and I'm going to basically have like the, you can choose your player. Like it's basically Mario and Luigi.
Then you customize it. You try different shoes, and none of them go on the sprite. It just ignores it.
Yeah. I've been a bit disappointed
pile up in the corner
with the attention to detail from ChatGPT, just assuming Pete wears shoes.
Yeah,
that's a mistake. So it's ignoring my instructions to not give you shoes as well. So that's very disappointing. But yeah, and so I now have multiple levels you can progress down. It's a little like linear and. Like,
can we run it on the website yet, or have you not?
No, I need to work this out. Probably.
What is it? Is it like a free JS game or? Like...
No, it's not 3J. It's a platformer. Yeah. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out how to get it, because I think it would be cool to just have it on the website for people to play with like a leaderboard. Then there's like the kind of back end piece there I need to figure out as well. I've got leaderboard. It's like, which I'm kind of just thinking like, how do I do that? All right, well, I'll
just have it in memory, and then every time we reboot the server, it just wipes.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Sorry guys,
I don't know
just
if
have
it
to play a
needs to
bit
be
more.
production ready.
Yeah. But I just love that I've got little like Janet Yellen sprite in the game, and that's who you're trying to avoid. But I kind of want to add a few more little things like this. But yeah, I mean that's like a weekend project that I've had lately, just to try and build this out.
I mean, one thing that I've found very, I don't know, satisfying about exploring this space has just been taking problems or things that I wanted to do or build and just building them like with momentum. Like I've got so many projects that are just like, I've progressed it to a point where it's like, right, I've learned all the things that I set out to learn. This is not how I would build this in the end. So I pause it and then I go back to the thing. Like I don't do any of the experimentation in the main project even. Like I mean, yes, there's like different Git branches for features that I know I'm building, but I'll just start an entirely new project to experiment with something like. So I've got one which is just a series of like web services that I can call for different Noster tasks.
Yeah,
and it's like that just doesn't. All of this logic will go into this project in the end, but it can come in at the right time as I need it, and then any experimentation I'll do over here. Check how it works, and then I'll use that as a framework to then write the documentation for how I build the thing correctly, and then build it once over here. But like that's worked really well as an approach. Like I feel like I'm now developing stuff quicker than I ever did. With a team of developers, which I find crazy. And my team of developers costs like, I don't know, maybe $1,000 a month or something.
Yes,
So
it's crazy.
I need to rationalize. Like the trouble is, like every time I go, you know what, I should just cancel this ChatGPT thing. They'll release something new, and I go, no, I'm just going to upgrade it and get the Pro one instead.
I'll have that. Yeah.
Same with Claude. I was just like, oh.
Do you know how I have been rationalizing it though? I feel like I've saved money from building some custom stuff that I run locally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so, I think that's an advantage. So,
or just trying to prototype one of these things with an external dev team or other people that you then fund like that.
Time and money.
That costs so much. Like, and then, just time you save yourself, opportunity costs. Like you can just do these things on the side whilst you're earning money doing something else. Like it's been, like I find it like just energy accretive.
Yeah.
Like I have new ideas.
Yeah.
Like it's just pulled me in a way that like nothing else really has recently beyond just Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've emerged from my sort of multi-year Bitcoin fugue state now into like the Zen moment of like, you know what, I think I've listened to all of the podcasts.
Yeah, you've got it covered.
Now. Like
You've read all of the books.
I know all the stuff.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm ready for something else.
So what's your like tool kit looking like? What's the stack? What are the tools you use the most? And
at the moment it would be like Cline in Visual Studio. So like Cline is like an agent system that then you can connect it to your sort of open router account. You can connect it to, like it has its own internal router where you can just pay credits to them and then they provide access to all the different models for you. So I usually use that for most of the coding that I do. I use O3 and now O3 Pro as of last night. I started using that for deep research tasks. So like when I go and kick off a project and I've got the more abstract questions about, you know, what am I trying to achieve? Like what's my skill base right now? Like how might I start architecting some of this stuff? What are the different like big design questions I need to, so I will just set those up as a set of projects and like I might not even read the output straight away. Like I could just, maybe there's like 10 different big research questions that I'm interested in for how I'm going to start this. And I'll set those off. Claude's got a version of that now as well, which is available for any, like certainly in the paid version of Claude, like it has it. Well, no, but not in the code. I've been playing with that a little bit as well. But so I will do like Claude for research tasks as well and just see how they think about different things. So like one of the things like with this new tablet I've got, I'm going to build myself a Noster-based ebook reader.
Nice.
So everything stays local on the device, and then I just really want something that I can then sync my page, like, and that's it. This is like one piece of data, and it'll just be encrypted. Stick it on Noster, and I can pick it up on any device that I happen to use, and it will just work across iPhones, your computer, your Android tablets, because it's so annoying like how tied in all these different systems are to like whisper sync things, and I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna build it. Ideally it would have like, I don't know, some sort of Blossom based discovery of ebooks that I could zap someone money for providing access to ebooks, which may or may not come from Anna's archive at some point. From, I don't care, like that's somebody else's job or whatnot. That would work. We'll
Just
see.
encourage more self-publishing.
Yeah, self-publishing is
That'd
good.
be cool. Yeah.
So what was I talking about? Tools. Yeah. So that I use like O3 for the abstract stuff of that. I have been dabbling with like Codex and Claude Code. Like they just don't. As I say, it doesn't hit in the same way as just.
Yeah.
Like there's something about the like working in the code with the really tight feedback loops and actually being involved that I think pays off with like Cline and Cursor as an environment. And I recognize that I'm still a lot more involved in that.
Yeah.
But it's like the humans I've taken out of that loop are the developers. Like I still want to direct and see the product go. And I think that's almost like, maybe there is like something there about like, well, what's the remaining role for the human is the bit that's left. And in developing new products, for me, it's me. Like if, you know, like no matter how good the AI is, if the product's for me, you need me in the loop. And so it's about me being in that loop, and I'm the last thing left in there. So that's interesting. Maybe that's the job of humans in the future, is to be the last remaining human in the loop for the product that's built specifically for you. So it's the experience, I think we talked about last week. Same thing.
Well, there's like a commercial application here as well, because I mean, I've been thinking about this a little bit when I've been using N8N. Like, you kind of asked this question about like, you start to explore the benefits of autonomous agents versus like static AI workflows. Yeah. And I reckon like, you know, 95+% of tasks that you might do, that you might want to automate, could probably just be done with like deterministic static workflow. And that's probably the optimal solution for most businesses, that, you know, you can set the guardrails and you're still there working alongside it. And, you know, like certainly the workflows I've built so far, albeit quite simple ones, I'm still trying to get outputs that I can play with, and all I'm really trying to do is cut a lot of time, like a manual processing that would go into that ordinarily if I did it. I mean, workflow systems are massive for this sort of thing. Like I think N8N is going to be one of those. You're going to hear about it all over the place because it's accessible enough, and it's got an open source version you can use that people are experimenting with it. Like it's not necessarily where I would put like production ready stuff. Yeah, but certainly for personal tasks, for prototyping, you know, stuff. Maybe like a small business type thing, it probably works. I mean, if I was doing something more, you know, like heavy, like high end, I would just use Stackwork personally, but that's because I know the guys. I have access to that. But it's similar sort of thing, right? It's like visual workflow builders, integrated tasks already, management of the jobs. It's probably like a little bit more, you have slightly better raw access to stuff inside Stackwork, but that's not really a generally available program. But you can replicate a lot of the ideas in something like N8N by taking those workflows. And what it does have that I think is particularly powerful is access to adapters for lots of different apps. So, like, you know, like the wife's problem, right? If you've got this problem where you find you're the thing that's just copying and pasting between all these different things, just, you know, that's something where like N8N might be useful for you. Yeah, I think I should play with it more. Like I've done initial like work on it, figuring out what it was, but I think because I'd done so much work in the other workflow tools, I was like, okay, I know what that is. That's fine. I just enjoy building stuff. So I went back to that, but I should prototype more in there. I think it's interesting because like a lot of people, when they're debating this stuff, will just revert to talking about autonomous agents, and you know, it's this idea of I'll just give it a goal and then it will go and figure out what the best steps are to achieve that goal. And Yeah, I don't know, like there's probably a lot of use cases within an organization where it's best that you just stick with a deterministic workflow, because, you know, you probably don't want it being creative when it comes to like accounting and tax filing and compliance and you know, there's stuff that is like just naturally more suited to having the guardrails around it. And so the question I was having was like, like would it, like an autonomous agent, be able to work out, like be able to identify the type of problem it's solving and go, do you know what, this is better suited to just having like a really deterministic static workflow, and I'm just going to set that in motion and then go off and do something else. And
this is definitely like a conversation I'm having a lot with Tom when I was at Startup. It was just like, is it like, how abstracted does this thing need to be? Because it certainly feels like the end game is like, I've got one like really abstracted, I know, like REPL loop that I just sit in that works out what to do next and always gets the right sort of answer. And that sounds like magic, but you're like, well, but at the same time, I'm only trying to do one of, I don't know, 1,000 things. And 1,000's a big number, but you could write down 1,000 things.
Yeah.
And then you go, well, you know, if I can just, like, if I only ever have to do the thing once or write it down once, and then I never do that task again, well, maybe I just write down the task and it's done. And I just like take the one that does most of my time, I write that one down really carefully and get good at it. Because then you can control a bit better, like, how it should do stuff. It's like, it's like saying, like, when you get like a human, like a clever human, and you employ it in a job, you still tell it what the job is and how to do it. Right? Like why would we expect like the computer to be better at that abstract reasoning than just, it's like, just give it the process. Like, even if like then there's another job which is iterating on the process to make it better. Like, I really do think that the abstract agent workflows are going to be not as good as programmed workflows, and that it's going to be quicker to just like enumerate, drink, throwback to a few podcasts.
Probably every episode so far.
Like, I think it will be quicker to just like enumerate like 1 million really good workflows once than it will be to like abstract the perfect thing to represent those 1 million things. Because then you can just choose. You put all those in a graph and you just choose the right one. It's like, which one of these is most like the thing that I'm trying to do? That one, cool, I'll just follow that. And then just like choose the top 5 and do all 5 of them at once, and then see which one gives you the best result. Like, this is probably a better way to learn. That's more natural for a computer to do. It's like, they don't need to do things once. They've got unlimited time and processors. They can clone themselves, just do it 10 times.
This is where the pattern matching is as well, right? You establish best practice on how to achieve a particular thing, and then it knows that's best practice, I'm just going to do that. You know?
You vectorize a workflow, you can choose the workflows based on closeness. You get 5 similar looking workflows. You could adjust it, you could evolve it.
And in practice, a lot of companies are essentially just, you know, the componentry looks the same in all of them. They're all doing payroll, and they all have any number of compliance-related reporting to do.
So
and
we enumerated a number of shared services.
Tax filing.
It's just like,
I
mean, we could get rid of tax. I'm okay with that. Like, that would be
nice. Could be quite happy there. But yeah, in that case, you know, it just makes sense to have the static workflow with the guardrails, and then where does the human sit in that? Does it flip all the way to the edge, or is it still just there?
I think, well, I mean,
it's just not in the center.
Whilst we talk about, I feel like there's a perspective we're taking, but I don't know if we always say out loud when we're thinking about like a human at the edge, or the hate model.
I think we're just going to go with it now, you know.
Which is, there's still humans, right? Like when we talk about, like, saying, okay, we want to create a set of products for other staff and businesses that live under, and they're all going to be based on this human at the edge model. But there's still 2 humans here, which is me and you, which drive the whole thing and give it intent and like what we're trying to create. And I think those humans don't go. Like, I think there, as I said earlier, like, it's the experiences, it's the intent. It's like, you will be the thing that has the intent that finds the problems to solve. Because you will be experiencing those problems. There will always be something that's not quite perfect. We seem to have a limited imagination for these things. That, you know, we're doing this podcast at City Beach. We're not doing it Olympus Mons, whatever it is on Mars, right? Why not? We could be there.
We should be.
Come on, what's going on? What's with all this slow progress? We were flying to the moon in the 60s. Come on, humans, pick up the pace. So we've got stuff to do. It's let's just go do that.
I feel like we're getting dangerously close to conspiracy corner.
What about how the moon isn't real? I love a conspiracy theory.
Me too.
It's a nice. They're kind of like, if nothing else, they're just good stories.
Yeah.
Just go that's quite interesting.
I think the reason is you kind of get drawn to them because you're like, this could be true. I can't work out if it is or not, but there's on some level I can see this.
I feel like in the most part, it kind of sits in that world of I don't care if it's true or not. It doesn't change anything about my life. That was listening to what's his name, Jesse Michaels and his podcast, where he was saying I talked about when they set off from the moon. After the first Apollo mission, and they were like, oh shit, that was a weird ringing sound. What's that about?
Oh yeah.
I said that's you'd get that sort of resonance on an object like that if it was more hollow than you expect. Bit weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, next one, they go to the moon and they set up a bunch of seismometers, and then they deliberately crash the engine into it as they take off from the lunar module, and it just rings like a bell, and they're like,
huh,
that's weird. And it's all just in the recorded sides, back in the 60s, and they just never mentioned. And you hear something like that, and you're like, that's fucking nuts.
That's crazy.
What are you saying? Why is the moon hollow or hollower than you expect? And it's weird stuff about the moon.
I'm going to queue up this podcast on the way home.
I think it's the one he did with Randall Carlson, but he talks about it a bit as well. He was Jesse was on Joe Rogan as well. Maybe about a week or two ago, and similarly he goes into all sorts of stuff, and you're like, it's just just good entertainment. It's just, as I said, now I've finished Bitcoin, I can just indulge in aliens. Nice solid crossover. It's just interesting, isn't it? Can't be nuts if there's tons of aliens. He's like, that's weird.
What makes sense?
It would almost seem normal, right? It's literally being. This is we've gone off one now, right?
But we have, yeah.
I checked the clock. We're an hour 20 in, so you've got your fill of AI, guys. Now we're just gonna
indulge ourselves.
We're just gonna talk about aliens for a minute. If we don't talk about aliens, how will we ever get Matt Pines on the podcast?
Well, that's
the
true.
question.
Yeah.
But he was. It's weird that we're at a place in society at the moment where there's a bunch of politicians in the US Senate discussing aliens and
UFOs
and how there's been crash retrieval programs and various people testifying that they have them, and it's just and everyone, I don't know if for one part the response is just kind of huh,
yeah,
and it's just you just sort of think, you know what, it's probably true. Fuck 'em.
Yeah.
I feel everything's just a fucking lie all the time these days.
That's it, yeah.
It's nuts.
I feel almost nothing would change if an alien just landed in front of us and started talking. People would just be yeah, that's not true. That didn't happen. And then other people would be it absolutely happened. And
what's the film? Is it District 9?
Yeah.
The South African one? It'd be like that. Everyone would just be they're being
that's
camped
Elysium.
somewhere, and then you just
that's
we live with these aliens now.
That's a crazy film, that. Yeah.
No, it's District 9 was the one.
I think they're quite similar, and they came out around the same time.
Okay, I haven't seen Elysium.
I think, maybe
District 9 is the one where it's all the South Africans, and the aliens live in the townships and stuff.
Maybe that is District 9. There's a South African character in Elysium, maybe. That's what I'm thinking about. But they're pretty similar by memory. They came out around the same time. I was actually having this, just while we're on films, I was having this conversation. I don't think there's been a good film since prior to 2020, and I want to know why. And I just can't, I can't think of anything that's been, remotely good.
I think copyright stuff just steams a lot of films.
And I could link this back to AI, because, I've been seeing a lot of, these VO3 kind of clips that are, doing the rounds at the moment. There's actually some pretty good stuff. I saw this guy doing, Stormtrooper vlogs. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
And I'm that's actually quite creative. I can get behind that. And that's amassed a few 100,000 followers in a few days.
Yeah.
And you know, and this has like divided people into two camps. It's like, this can be like basically the death of creativity, or it's going to be like a huge opportunity for creators. We should do a whole episode on this.
I haven't played it. Maybe before next week then we should set ourselves a challenge of getting on VO and just experimenting with the tools and seeing what they can do.
I think it's
maybe we'll create some like shorts and get them out.
Yeah.
Like, boost the YouTube channel.
Maybe we should do maybe we should get someone like Joel from Juiceboxing to do a pod with us. Friend of the pod, Joel. Give him a little shout
There you
out.
go, a little shout out.
But then we're going to talk about creativity.
So he's going to sit here in the van, is he?
We'll get him along into the van.
So you get like 10 people in the van.
Joel, if you're listening, I've just volunteered you for a podcast. We're going to talk about the death of creators, or it's a huge boon for
I think if anything, it makes like the ability to be creative cheaper and easier. Like a lot of the, you know, the creativity is in the idea, and then like how you bring it to life. Like you just have so many new tools to bring stuff to life these days. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. But we should do a pod on it. Like I suspect it's just like democratizing creativity, like everything else, right? To some degree, it's like you're removing all of the centralized barriers that would otherwise control content creation, like Hollywood. Yeah, and boo Hollywood.
We don't like Hollywood, especially if they're not going to create anything good.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if it like you say it's interesting that you picked out 2020, and like one of the things that happened, like, you know, remember in like the GFC, like it was interesting that one of the things that came out of that was like, oh, we had this like massive crash where we printed a ton of money to recapitalize banks that had stolen all of your money for the 10 years prior to that. So great, like let's just give them everything else that we own, hence Bitcoin. Yes. And like we went, oh, wasn't that inflationary? And we carried on with the same like deflationary, secular sort of deflationary trend of just interest rates getting lower and lower and lower, things getting cheaper and cheaper, until 2020 was the moment that it all pushed. And like, how many like meetings have we had with people where we've asked like, well, what's the number one problem or the number one cost in your business that like keeps you up at night at the moment? And it's labor cost
every time.
And 2020 was the inflection point of where I mean, labor's always like crept up, but because costs were going down and interest rates were going down, which means mortgages were going down, like it just wasn't front and center of people's mind at the time, I think, like how bad the inflation and the money printing and everything was. Yeah. And then it was so horrendous in COVID, like the amount of like new money that came in, that it just kind of broke the system, and now everything's inflationary. Yeah. And I wonder if it's just the costs of production for almost anything of going up so rapidly that it affects where you would make the bets. So like you might have taken bets on things that were a little bit out of the ordinary before, whereas now you're like, all right, we'll just do another Marvel movie, I guess. Exactly. You know, same people just, you know, roll out the sausage from the machine, and you know, no more steak, guys. We're not going to try it. Like, everybody loves a sausage. Yeah. Like it's quote. Everybody loves a sausage. Wow. Other stuff.
That might get us demonetized on YouTube.
We're an hour and a half in. It's the point of the podcast where we can start saying that everybody loves a sausage. Yeah. So there could be something there. But I don't know. I don't know too much about Hollywood. So.
No, neither.
I think they screwed themselves when they got so into IP laws. Like I'm very much
Now we're just reeling off our greatest hits.
Sort of IP guy. Like, just get rid of it. I think it's just to the detriment of society that IP exists at all.
I mean, I feel like that's a whole pod right there as well. It's probably one we should bank.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, it depends if we like how keen people are for us to just riff on like whatever. I mean, I don't care. I'm just gonna riff on whatever.
I mean, that's what we're doing today. It's like a lot of riffing. What I would say about this whole like creator risk as well is, if you can just keep churning out a bunch of content with something like VO3, like have we already achieved like the whole dead internet theory? You know, like that was a conspiracy theory as well. But I think that goes back like 10 years maybe, where people were like, the internet actually died back in like 2016 or something. And it's just all like bot content.
I would say, even if it's not bot content, in a way it kind of died at that point, just because of the power shift back to, like, you have platforms that even if the people are correct, they almost act like bots, right? Like, nobody wants to make all of their YouTube thumbnails into these like slack-jawed, like open mouth sort of things. True. They do it because they're subservient to like one central algorithm that plans everything. Like, so there's a talk that Jack did, I think it was at the HRF last year, where he talked about, like, we're very concerned about freedom of speech, but we're forgetting about like freedom of thought and free will. And we should maybe be careful of this because we have, we're kind of enslaved to a lot of these algorithms. We consume stuff based on algorithms. We produce stuff based on algorithms. So even if it isn't bots, if it's still people producing to meet the algorithm, then is there any free will in there? Is there any creativity if you're just being creative in order to meet a predefined algorithm? Well, no. So how do we work around that? Noster. But, quick answer.
That's the TLDR.
Luckily, guys, it's already solved.
Let's get everyone on Noster.
Yeah, but we should definitely do something on Noster. Like, it would be interesting to get some guys in to talk about. It's an interesting moment. You should probably hear this as well. The wife was listening to Rise of the Generalists the other day.
Oh, yeah.
In the car. Like, there's two things that came out of this. One was I started talking about wanting to go to sovereign engineering. And so she sent me a message. She said, "Oh, what's this sovereign engineering thing? Like, is this like how long is it for? Is it like a week or something? Like, where do you need to go? Like, it sounds good." And I was like, "Oh, I think it might be like 1 or 2 months." She's like, "What?" But like, she's already warmed up to it via the podcast. Yes. So like, I think we'll see. I'll ask, I guess, Pablo and Gigi figure out when it is. But I think it'd be cool. The other one was like the kids started listening to me on the education one, like banging on about homeschool and how they have like a vague, like they've got a permission slip to not go to school if it's like not working for them, and they're like, "Yeah, cool, Dad's gonna homeschool us." I was like, no, like they already know this. Like, I talk to them every now and again. I just don't know if they believe it. Yeah, which is like, it's not, it's there. It's an option. Should the need arise, then we can do that. But it's not I don't want to go to school today, therefore I'm just going to be at home. It's more of a, this isn't working for me and I'm not learning correctly, so I'm going to demonstrate to Dad that I can learn independently better than I do at school. Then it's an option. It's a prove. Prove it. Don't just tell me you can't be bothered.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we're not here to raise low agency children.
That's right. But I also think we're going to keep getting more and more data points around like AI assisted learning. I mean, you're already seeing there's a school that's adopted this in the US. I've forgotten the name of it, but they've already gotten like some really interesting data about the rate of learning increase from using AI as like essentially a tutor alongside a teacher. And I just think this is where it's going to go. And you've got a bifurcation now, just to add the addendum to our previous episode, if anyone wants to go and listen to our
I've had good feedback on the learning.
On the learning, yeah. I think this is like, there is a natural bifurcation that is occurring right now where you've got teachers and schools and school administrators who are opposing AI and trying to ban it, and then you've got others who are just embracing it and trying to experiment and figure it out. And I think the latter is the right approach. Just go and play. See how it works for you.
Absolutely play.
Don't ban.
Plan and use and build and do stuff and just spend an ungodly amount of money on access to these things, because then you'll go, yeah, you know what, it's good. I remember listening to my mate Justin. He was on No Solutions. He said it, like, he was talking to, it was him and Gigi, and they were saying like, oh, I started off and it was like I couldn't, like, I was almost like trying to keep a cap on my costs. Like, I started off and I was like, oh no, I'm not buying that, I'm not buying that. And then I started like working with them where it tells me how much stuff costs as it goes along, and I was like, oh, I'm actually getting good value out of it. And then all of a sudden it's like I'm in ways like looking for how I can spend more money on this and I can get more things done. I'm like, I feel that. It's just like they're all so like that's just useful enough. But I would have, like, there's so many things like I would have paid somebody $50 to do that, and this is like going to cost me $20 a month.
It really does feel like a superpower.
$100, $1,000. Like, it's I mean, the next, so like, I don't know if I ever even finished off the stack question of like what I'm doing. So mainly like with the coding stuff is that the bit that's missing for me is I'm just getting so sick of having to retype the same sort of context for things over and over again, like because there's things that I use when I'm coding, there's things I'm using for personal like woodwork projects, there's things I might use for other projects. So I'm like, you know what, it's time to just build this personal knowledge graph so that I just get it to look up facts that are relevant to the situation.
I mean, could you, like, just as a cheap and easy solution here, could you just like get a bunch of like rules built out in like Markdown and you pop that into the code files?
I mean, I use it for, like, Cursor has its Cursor rules, Cline has its Cline rules, same sort of concepts. So I mean, I do, like, I've been expanding that as I go, so it's just like, these are the rules that I need you to follow. This is how you act in the plan mode. This is how you act when you're acting. These are the stop points. Like, this is how you remind me to keep checking in my Git branches and make sure I'm on top of stuff. Like, this is, I mean, even there you can give them tools to do that. I'm not a massive fan at the moment of just installing like random MCP servers, because I find it a little bit like, it's so easy just to leak all of your secrets and things. So I'm like, I just like that bit. I'm happy to be involved. I'll push the button for that. But like the bit I want to add the knowledge base, the knowledge graph stuff.
That sounds
and have that whole thing locally, because again, it's like the technology is not the hard bit. It's the ontology. It's the use. It's like, how do I abstract stuff? Like, how do I plan the processes? Like, how do I integrate getting stuff into the knowledge base? How do I classify it? Like, that's the interesting piece. And like I was like, I need to just
build it for ourselves and then
start serving that. It's going to be such an accelerator for everything else that I then do with AI, that I can do that, build one interface for it, wrap an MCP server around it that I've built that I trust, and then I can just put it into whatever.
I like it.
But what's the title of the episode? I said tools. I don't know if we even focused on tools.
Kind of talked about
we could
tools.
call it Everybody Loves a Sausage.
We could. I feel like people are going to get a completely different expectation from
I have
that
to
title.
change the video. We have like a blue version of the...
I think we'll go with tools.
All right.
That's probably a wrap.
That's the good stuff.